Ramirez. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We have Ms. April Tyrell, our district-wide liaison, counseling liaison, to lead us in the pledge, and that will be followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Moving on to item number 5. I would like to ask the board to consider a executive session for the purposes mentioned in the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Pingarelli, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Wiley? Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of moving to executive session and pursuant as described in the agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We will move to our executive conference room. Dr. Spurgeon and our legal counsel will join us.
Yes, I'd like Dr. Spurgeon to be in.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back. The board is returning from regular session. We'll move on to item number 6. At 5:31, I would entertain a motion to return to regular session.
So moved.
It's been moved by Dr. Pingarelli. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Ramirez. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have returned to executive session. Moving back to the regular meetings. All right, the minutes from August 10th. Are there any corrections? Ms. Morgan, did you get any corrections? Hearing no corrections, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from last session.
Right, is there a second?
Oh, yes, okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Ramirez moved. Which one are you on, 6 or 7? We're on 7, the minutes. Okay, the minutes, it's been moved by Mr. Ramirez. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It'd be second by Mrs. Wiley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. Moving on to current events, Dr. Spurgeon.
Testing 1, 2. Am I on? Am I on? Doesn't sound like it. So anyway, am I on?
There you go.
Testing 1, 2. Is that better? Okay, so thank you, Mr. Straka. So very exciting. The last month, what I really like to see is the Surprise Independent. We've had several really nice articles of our students and our programs at West-MEC. We had an article called West-MEC Graduates Earn Credentials in Fields, and one called West-MEC Prepares Next Wave of Workers in Surprise. I've given several tours on campuses. I was with Ms. Wiley and a couple of her colleagues to tour a couple of campuses. Chamber events I've attended. There's so many I've been to, but I've been able to attend Glendale, Buckeye, Greater Phoenix, and Surprise Chamber of Commerce meetings and business expos, business-to-business connection, breakfast to business, West-MEC district events. I was able to attend the Culinary Arts and the Fire Safety Student Orientation at Astoria Mountain Community College and Glendale Community College. Able to attend the National Aviation Day on Central Campus. We're working on the utilization meetings at all 4 of our campuses. I've completed my vision presentation with all 4 campuses and the START and corporate offices.
We've had some member district visits where we've had a team visit with the superintendent and his team from Agua Fria, which I think is going to be very exciting in the future about some things that we're talking about there. I was able to visit my first high schools in the Buckeye School District. I visited Yonker High School and also Buckeye High School and got a chance to visit their CTE programs, which was fantastic. I've done a number of city and business partnership meetings. One of the things I'm most excited about is we're working with the Arizona Commerce Authority right now. We were able to be a part of the pitch to try to lure a new company into the West Valley, and so we got to be a part of that conversation for the first time here at West-MEC, and we've been invited now to a second partner to be able to pitch. And so the reason I think that's important is I think when you're in on the front side, it gives that company the obligation that West-MEC is going to be a part of the collaborative effort to bring that business here in town and also be a part of workforce development and providing a workforce for that company. In other meetings, we've done our ASA meetings, our CTED superintendent meetings, and I've been able to meet with some legislators so far, and I think every single one of them in our area on my calendar. I think we're real close to getting them all on my calendar now. But so far, I've met with Senator Martin Quezada, Representative Judy Sweebert, and Representative Kelly Butler. And so I have several folks on the calendar to be able to meet with them as well. And several things we're talking about, not only what we do in CTE and how the legislature can help us, but also some of our challenges. And we're also talking about the aggregate expenditure limit and how we're hoping that the governor will potentially call a special session. If not, at least the state legislature will do something to extend the AEL. The last thing I'll mention is a couple of us were able to attend the Arizona Gubernatorial Forum with Carrie Lake and Katie Hobbs, and so I was able to meet Carrie Lake, and we're hoping to get a chance to meet Katie Hobbs in the future. We've invited both of them to tour campuses and have that conversation around West-MEC. So there's a lot of great things going on. One of the things I want to mention that I've determined since I've been here July 1st, the pandemic really had some positive impact in probably the area of technology, but there was also some real negative things that have happened. And so it's almost like we're having to reintroduce West-MEC because there's been a 2-year period where, not a lot of folks were face-to-face. And so we're spending some time rebranding ourselves and having a lot of conversations about building partnerships because we have to double our efforts to be able to do the same thing pre-COVID that we're doing now because companies have closed, companies have downsized, companies have had some of their folks go to hybrid schedules, some are at home only. And some businesses just have less people to work with. So now we've got to double our efforts to be able to offer our students job shadowing, internships, externships, and the work-based learning experiences. So we have a lot of things going on right now, meeting with a lot of folks, and real positive feedback around the work that we do collectively as a board, as administration, as a teaching staff, and just could not be more proud of the work that we've been in lots of classrooms, seen most of our programs, and real proud about the start of the school year and real proud about the work that's happening there. So that's all, sir.
Does the board have any reports, Mr. Kaltenbach?
I do. Today I was at Canyon View High School, which is Agua Fria High School, one of our West-MEC satellite programs. They hosted one of the state Arizona FFA events. Over 560 FFA members from all of the West-MEC satellite chapters and a couple other chapters in the East Valley were there. We got to meet with our executive director and all that kind of stuff. It was good times. But thanks again to West-MEC for supporting satellite programs in all of our districts, especially those that aren't part of West-MEC Central. But yeah, pretty good. I got to meet with Mr. Wakefield. Earlier last week. It was good talking about strategic planning. So.
I got a chance to visit the award-winning FFA program at Buckeye High School. So
yeah. They're pretty good people.
Very impressed. Yes.
Well, thank you.
All right, any other board members? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there anything people have questions about?
No, I just am excited about the new hires. I love that.
Dr. Pingarelli?
Nothing from me. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second by Mr. Kay. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on to item number 10. Call to the public. Ms. Markham, I have no cards. Anyone from the public would like to address the board? One more time, anyone want to line up? There's nobody here. All right. We'll move on. Thank you. First reading of policies. Dr. Erb.
Okay, Chairman Straka and members of the governing board, just a quick review. I think Mr. Ramirez, this might be the first time that we've done a policy that we've reviewed as a group, because he came on, I think, a year ago, just before we finished any of the new policies. So as a protocol and the procedure, we have 2 readings. This is the one tonight to go through the information on these 2 policies, and then we have a month, 3 weeks that you could call me, or you can call and have information from legal counsel. I asked Ms. Siegel to stay tonight because there's a lot of changes in the parental rights and the survey, parent survey information. So it gives you an opportunity to ask questions. If I can't answer them, then I can maybe defer them to Mrs. Siegel for legal advice. So in front of you, we have 2 policies. The first one is the parental rights. And in the past legislation, House Bill 2161 amended the Bill of Rights, which is ARS's 601 and 602. And the bill also created a lot of language for parents for a cause of action to bring lawsuits and seek damages if the courts feel parents' rights have been violated. So that's the one we're going to go through first on parent rights. I'm going to go through the slides with you. I usually don't present slides, but there was so much information in the regulations and the exhibits and the policy that I thought it would be better to kind of organize it and place it in that format. So, my arrow here. Okay, the first slide in the policy, it was moved to the first section that the governing board recognizes parents' rights as listed in the Parents' Bill of Rights, which I stated was 601 and 602. And then they also added, for the purpose of this policy, parents are defined as the natural, adoptive, or legal guardian. So that's the definition that we went with. Then in the policy on page 2, these 4 or 5 that you have in your policy that are A, B, C, D, and E, F, and G, there were minor changes, and if there were changes, it was all grammatical. So those were in our policy previously, they were part of our practices, and they were in our present policy that we have today. On pages, the next page, procedures for attaining signed written consent from parents before, move forward a little bit. Before using videos, audio, electronic materials that may be inappropriate for the age of students. And then I put an asterisk, procedures to withdraw students from any instruction or presentation regarding sexuality or immune deficiency syndrome was added in its new language, so I highlighted that that's new in our policy. Procedures to learn about CTSO activities was previous in our policy. On pages 3 and 4 of your policy that you have in front of you, they've added and brought these from a former section into opting out of assignments, opting out of immunizations, excusing students for religious purposes, access to instructional materials. That is new. It's in addition to this part of the policy, but it's not new from previous practices. They have the right to receive the annual report card. We didn't have that in our former language, but we have it in our new language, and we do an annual report that we send to parents. Attendance and school age requirements, we didn't have it in our former policy, we have it in the new one.
Dr. Erb?
Yes.
What is a school age requirement?
Would be that they enter as a kindergartner and their age to enter in, and then we can't do anybody past the 12th, 13th grade, the age requirement for attendance, for ADM. Review of course of study and textbooks was moved to this section. And then policies related to parent involvement was in previously. Participation in the parent satisfaction survey, we've been doing that. That's not new for this section. Access to all written electronic records of a school district or a school district employee concerning the parent Students is new. And it's part of the language, and you'll see when we get into the regulations and the exhibits, there's a little bit more clarification there. Access to the Department of Education handbook that is posted on our website. That is from the Department of Education, but also the Bill of Rights. We have to place that on our website. Once the board approves this in October, then we will get it posted on our website with all of the attached information. In there, the SAFE system is not new. Student information, provide information about policy in electronic format. We will be sending this out so parents have access to all these parental rights. And that's one of the new formats in there, that the parents have a right to know this information. We have to place it on our website, as well as we're going to send it and make sure our parents are communicated once the board approves this policy. New one was recognition of the diversity of parents and promote widespread parent participation. And then make sure that our resumes of current instructors are available to parents. That's not new, but I talked to the principals today to make sure that they have resumes of all of their employees on their campus. Chairman Straka.
Diversity, can we define that? Is that income level? Is that race? Is that what constitutes diversity?
Okay.
Citizen, non-citizen, I mean, you could take it 20 different ways.
I think you, Mr. President, members of the board, this comes from the statute, the new statute. And unless they define diversity a little bit more, I think you're pretty well stuck with just the word diversity. I agree with you. I think there are portions of this bill that will be challenged, whether it will succeed or not, on void for vagueness, and this is an example of one. But I don't think you have the authority to narrow diversity if the intent of the legislature was a broad term. So.
But a lot of that we might not even capture, so how do you report something we don't capture?
Let me do some research and get back to you for the second reading.
Okay. Any other questions before I go to the next one, because we get into the what parents.
Just real quick, Dr. Urban and Siegel, do you see anything in here that will be highly impacted for West-MEC?
Little or nothing will be impactful as far as for West-MEC. You have a small population, first of all, as far as age-wise, and I don't think a lot of this will affect you.
Thank you.
So, Chairman Straka, Dr. Pingarelli, I guess my response would be, I don't believe it will have a major impact on us.
Okay.
One, that we have great 11th and 12th grade students that attend. We have very few challenges or parent issues with some of the new legislation and old legislation because of our communication with the parents. In the 11 years I've been here, I've only done one long-term suspension from any student that's attended any of our programs. We have great kids. They're here for a reason, and they have a pathway and a passion for what they're doing, so I don't see major impact to us.
Thank you, Dr.
How many requests for records do we get regularly?
I have had none here, so building principals, have you had any? You're all here tonight. Any parents requested any records from you?
No. And if I may interject, FERPA allows parents to have access to educational records.
Yeah.
The only thing that gets a little hinky is to what extent that means. I mean, is it a grade book of a teacher? You know, how you drill down that.
And I would add just one other thing. We did have requests for information records when we had the Title IX issue a year ago. We had to give that parent all of our educational records for that for her student, and we also had to give her all of the videos because we have cameras on our campus, and she requested all of it. And that's before all of this was in policy or in legislation.
How long do we retain the video and stuff?
Mr. Heath isn't here tonight, but we can capture it, I want to say for 3 months. I think that's pretty much, and we were able to provide everything that the
Keep it
parent
in-
requested.
The less we keep, the less expensive it is, because that sounds like a lot of video and a lot of storage and a lot of money in the long run.
Okay, the next one is on page 5 of your policy. When parents do request written information to the question that was asked, the superintendent will deliver information within 10 calendar days. We have to provide parents a written explanation for the denial of any requested information. And if the information is denied and it's not received within 15 calendar days, the parents may submit in writing to the governing board a request. Then the governing board then, if the request doesn't meet the 24 hours in advance standard that you have to have it for an agenda, then it would be placed on the former or the next formal governing board meeting. This is all new legislation. Okay, the next one is on pages 7 and 8. What records can parents request? This is the list that's in the policy and through statute that was given to us. These are the type of records that they can request. The only one on there is the psychological records. As is CTED, we do not do student evaluations. If they come from a charter or their member district, they do any of the testing back at their member district. Parents' cause of action is also new within here. The parents have a right that if they feel they haven't been treated and we have refused to give them information in a timely manner, then they can file a lawsuit. A parent who successfully asserts a claim, they can recover relief. They can have an injunctive relief, and they can recover reasonable attorney fees and costs. Ms. Siegel.
May I speak?
Yes, ma'am.
I just have to tell you my personal bias against putting this in policy. ASBA put it in their model policy. I think that reiterating a statute in policy is redundant. ASBA recommends it. I also don't like telling people how to sue my clients, but it's up to you if you want to have that there so that the parent not only can look at actual statute, but also can see it in policy. That's fine.
Does our, sorry,
No, go
does
ahead.
our policy reference, like if they found our policy, does it reference statute? So you could then see that this came from, or the bulk of all this came from a Marist,
Yes.
whatever?
At the bottom, it shows the statutory citation.
I guess I'd be inclined to agree with you on this
There's a
section.
hyperlink. We could keep it in, but I just don't like to tell people how to sue us.
I agree. Yeah.
That's the attorney's job to find out.
It's the plaintiff's attorney's job to find out how to sue.
This would all occur after we had violated the 10-day and the 15-day and all those
Right,
things, right? So
On pages 10 and 11, all of the parental rights that are in there were there previously until you get to A through N. Their A through N in this one have minimal changes. They either changed the guardian, the language was pretty minimal, so there wasn't anything major until you get to O. And O in the exhibit, it reinforces the government agency employee shall not interfere with the fundamental rights of parents to direct the upbringing of their child with education, healthcare, mental health, or of their student. It also states that any parent may bring suit. So there it is again, that they have the right to bring that. That's in policy in the exhibit. And if the board wants to take that part out of there, we can change that. That's in O of the exhibit. In P, it states that the government entity has the burden of proof. So if they do take us to court, then we have the burden on us to prove that we did not violate the rights of the parent on the request for information. And then they list 2 items there, that the interference is essential to accomplish a compelling government interest. So if we do interfere, an example could be if they have an injury on the campus, we can't get a hold of the parents to get permission, and we know it's a life and death situation, we have to take the child, and the parents get concerned or cause, and they're upset at us, I think we could interfere because it's essential that we get them to medical and have services provided. That's just one example. There's probably others. And then we have to, whatever our intervention is, it's very narrowly tailored to the issue. So we'll have to prove that in court if we are going to court. That's two pieces of the legislation. The Q in there, if the government entity or official is unsuccessful in court, then they can get granted relief. So those are the major three items. The exhibit, the regulations, usually we don't bring all three together, but through the change of the legislation, it was important that all three parts of the policy be brought to the governing board. So with that, if you have any other questions that Mrs. Siegel can answer, we have 3 weeks. Give us additional feedback, and then we'll bring it back for the second reading in October.
In my memory, this is kind of a first. Usually we do the first reading, like, yeah, all right, change a word here or there. If we as a board did not want that the instructions on how to sue us, as Mrs. Siegel pointed out, do we say that now? Do we do it with the second reading? Do we do it when we vote on it?
I would say that you need to state it now and give legal counsel and myself directions so that we can modify the policy.
But this isn't a voting item, so we're just giving you instruction.
Yeah. And I would concur. I would love to, whatever is not necessary to help the public sue us, or I'm open, and I'd love to hear your feedback and work with Dr. Erb on reducing.
We could easily take it out, but there will be a reference at the bottom to the statute.
Yeah, as there should be. So I guess that's two of our opinions. I don't know about the rest of the board.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Just always let me be the black sheep here. You know, I understand the arguments that my fellow board members are giving, but also take it from the perspective of the parents. And let's use the example of the last issue that Dr. Erb brought up with regard to not directing a student or administration or a teacher in assigning health care. You know, a child, let me give the scenario, a child comes home and says, oh, Mommy, my teacher says that I should be on Ritalin. My teacher says that I need specialized social emotional learning. I know these are all hot buttons, okay? And so a parent doesn't have the kind of resources that a district has. And so I would certainly caution us to be careful with removing that. So obviously, it appears that, you know, on this issue I may not prevail, but those are my concerns. I just want to state that.
Yeah.
Particularly, may I finish, Dr. or Mr. Straka? Particularly in the prevailing climate that we are now in, I think that we want to certainly protect, the board wants to protect the interest of the district, but we also need to be cognizant of parents. And, you know, I don't think for our district this is going to be a major topic. So I would just take caution if we're going to remove this.
I guess my thought would be, are any of our other policies, do we lay out how to sue us? Because then it becomes a consistency issue. If we haven't put it anywhere else, it doesn't make sense to put it here.
You know, your policy books is thick, I don't know.
And you don't have it memorized?
It's two binders.
Binders. And the only one I would think would be, I'll double check and have that answered.
I just don't.
Two versions.
Yeah, I just don't think, you know, anyways, that'd be my thought, Dr. Pingarelli, is let's be consistent with policy as well. Let's move, should we move on to the next one?
Nope.
Okay, the second one is under student surveys. This is pretty much new language again. No survey that solicits personal information about a student regarding any of the listed categories. There's 14 here, and it's 15117A. Today we explained it to the building principals, and basically this states that the superintendent is the one that would have to approve a survey that contained these 14 items that you have in the policy in front of you on page 14. And then here are the remaining ones. Basically, the statute says we cannot ask any of these questions of our students unless it's approved by the superintendent. Mrs. Wiley.
What's the biometric?
Health, medical information.
Health, medical, yeah.
Health, medical?
It's like your biometric is your fingerprint, you can open your laptop and stuff, but you wouldn't put that on a survey.
So these are just information. It doesn't mean we can't do surveys, because in the first statute, we have to do a parent satisfaction survey. We've been doing them every year, and we've seen the results of our parents. So we can continue to do that, but these 14 items, we are restricted from asking questions unless the superintendent gives approval. And on page 15 you have in here, part of the policy, if the superintendent decides to authorize a survey with these 14, which was stated today, I'm not going to authorize any survey that has these 14 in them. He must provide a copy of the survey to student parents along with a form of consent, and it has to be given to them 7 days in advance of administering a survey. Mr. Cutler.
So as I understand it, these are district surveys and maybe classroom surveys, right?
I think it's any.
Yes, it could be any.
Right, but like if a child was in a counselor's office, they could be asked these questions one-on-one. It would all be part of that public record thing and the other stuff, but just not surveys of classes and groups of people, right?
Correct. Thank you. The definition is under a survey. There was a lot of angst out there. If I have a conversation with someone on one of these subjects, is that a survey? I don't believe that's a survey.
Thank you.
Okay?
So you couldn't develop a survey where you're asking all the students if they have allergies, hay fever, if they're diabetic, if they have high blood pressure, you can't do any, that would be biometric.
Okay, and then on 15 of this, request for the survey information. Again, the district shall provide the following: the name of the survey, the date of the survey, the method of administration, the amount of time required, the types of information that we're going to collect, and the reason for administering it. And then the last one, parents who believe their rights have been violated again, they can file a written complaint with the district. Once we receive it, we're going to attempt to take the information out of there that shouldn't have been in there, and then we have to have it and keep it on file for a year. But if we're not offering and doing any surveys with these 14, I don't believe we'll be violating any of the procedures that are in the policy.
I like how you have to destroy the information, but keep it for a year.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last one, if students are participating in this survey, then we have to provide them an alternative activity if their parents opt out, and they can't be counted against their attendance for the day or the ADM. And then the last one, it reiterates again, if the superintendent's going to do this, he needs to read the full policy in its entirety.
So I
How
guess
long
you
are
have to-
these surveys that we have to provide opt-out activities?
I think some of these surveys are done by classroom teachers. And, you know, I just don't know of districts, your district, doing any such thing other than parent satisfaction with the qualities of the curriculum.
Mr. Strickland, yeah, that was my question to both you and Dr. Herb. There may be a situation where the superintendent, there's a reason, a compelling reason to ask one or more of these questions, but in general, for our district, you don't see this is really applicable for West-MEC.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah.
It almost appears as if it's kind of a protection of third-party organizations coming into a district, administering surveys to gather information. Because I don't know that we would ever develop surveys that would address any of those 14 areas for any reason.
Mr. Straka and to the board and Dr. Spurgeon and everyone else, this is not prohibitive of getting information with regard to interest in, where you're going in terms of career, or where where information that we would see as important for planning our programs.
I don't believe so.
Okay, that's important.
Where they're going to school, what's their next, where are
Step.
they going into business, what they're going to go to a four-year university, if they're going to go into the service, it doesn't keep us from asking.
Do you have work experience? What kind of things?
Okay.
Yeah, all the career exploration stuff is fine.
Okay, so with that, we have our 3 weeks. You've given some direction to legal counsel. We'll work through it, and then we'll bring it back in October for second reading. Thank you.
It took a little while to ask Dr. Erb to make sure we walk through this.
Yeah,
Very
no,
good.
it's a hot topic, and thank you, Dr. Erb.
And next month, we have 13 more that we have to go through that are new that we'll be bringing. And then I'll touch on a little bit. We went to a Title IX training on sexual harassment, Title IX procedure. It's very complicated. There was 144 slides. I've narrowed down to about 12, and we have to communicate that, one to the board and also to all of our staff. After the board approves these policies, I'll be visiting each of the campuses to educate and go over this with all of our employees.
So exciting.
So, I asked,
Yes, sir.
sorry, Mr. Strucker, Ms. Siegel, one question. Let's just say that the board was in consensus that something that the legislature did is just untenable to us. Can we not adopt it, or would we be in violation?
If the legislature tells you to adopt a policy, you need to adopt the policy to stay out of trouble. But if it's just adopting verbatim a statute that the legislature has done, I think I see that as different. But if it says the superintendent, if the statute says, for instance, the superintendent shall or the governing board shall adopt policies concerning X, Y, Z, you got to do it.
Can we just reduce it down to,
Yeah, you can reduce it down to what you.
can we reduce it down to the district will follow the policy of state law, blah, 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 and any revisions forthcoming?
It's somewhat circular, but it would depend upon the particular situation.
Just trying to.
It goes back to protecting the district, right? So if we didn't adopt it, but as soon as a parent or someone complains, then at that point, now we're in violation and, right, kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's only a few pages. The original document, Dr. Erb, is 94 or 96 pages. How long is the original,
For which one?
the statute? You went through a number of pages for all three of these.
Well, this one for parent involvement, we usually just bring the policy, which was only 2 or 3 pages, but because it was moved to a regulation and exhibit, it was probably 10, 11 pages long.
So we actually reduced it by policy rather than the entire document, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now we get to hear something a little bit more fun. Ms. Babiar, recruitment.
No, you skipped 12.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, career services, Ms. Putton.
That's even more.
Even better. No, this is the best part of the night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are we just doing this space bar? Okay. Good evening, Governing Board Chairman Straka, Governing Board members, and Superintendent Spurgeon. Tonight, we are going to be sharing the Industry Credential Report and the Career Placement Report for the district. But before we do that, we just want to introduce you all to the Career Services team and some of the highlighted events that they've been participating in the past few months. So the Career Services team experienced a lot of changes this last year, but we are excited to say that we are completely fully staffed. That includes 4 career coaches at each one of our campuses, as well as a new employment specialist role on the adult ed side, which is solely focused on career readiness and employment assistance for our adults. So this was our summer 2022 Fast Forward event. Career Services put this on during the summer break as a way to keep students engaged while they're out of classes. And students learned anything from job searching, effective job application strategies, what to expect when they're starting a new job, as well as LinkedIn profile basics, and also had an opportunity to take LinkedIn profile pictures, which I think was the highlight of the whole event. They seemed to really enjoy that. This one is our Northeast Campus mock interview event for the pharmacy program. And students were able to practice their interviewing skills with industry partners such as Banner Health, Walgreens, CVS, Humana, and Fry's Food and Drug, and many others. And the employers were able to give them some great feedback that these students are going to be able to take with them to their next interview post-West-MEC. And on our adult side.
Excellent. So I am super excited to share the Arizona chapter of National Tooling and Machining Association has reached out to us actually a few months ago, asking to celebrate Precision Machining Month in October, and they want to do it at our central campus to really highlight West-MEC and highlight our precision manufacturing program. So I am super excited. I know the campus is super excited to have them on site. They are inviting the industry to participate as well as their members. They want students, alumni. They want to make it a huge, huge event. My biggest selling point to them will be how are they going to support us with teachers. As you know, our precision manufacturing has been on hold for secondary for 2 years. The adult ed has gone on hold a couple of years since we've instituted it. So I am super excited to have them on board and have their support. The event will be on October 19th. It will run from 5 to 6:30. You don't have to be there for the entire event. If you do want to attend the event, you do have to register for the event. If you want to attend as our West-MEC board, definitely let me know. You can let me know via D, I think would probably be the easiest, and I can let them know that you'll be attending so that they can have you on the list. There is a max capacity of 80, and we hope to, well, they hope as well as us to meet that 80. So we're super excited for that event, and we hope that if you have time that you're able to make it. Thank you.
And you are always welcome at mock interview events as well as fast forward events. So now let's go ahead and get into our industry credential report. So first off, throughout the school year, Career Services works with instructors and third-party testing centers and sites to collect and track all of the credential data that you have in front of you tonight. They are proctoring, they're scheduling, sometimes multiple sessions a day. They are walking students through payments, through the application processes, and they even in the past have spent time transporting students to testing sites. So they truly do so much for our students, and they really are one of their biggest cheerleaders.
And we just opened our start session for some new testing, correct?
Yes, so you are way ahead of the game.
Okay.
That is later on in the presentation. But yes, we are in the final stages of becoming a testing site for the Arizona State Board of Cosmetology, which has been a pain point for the past few years and trying to get students tested in a timely manner. So yes, that's great news. Because of all the combined great work of Career Services, instructors, and other West-MEC staff, we are happy to report that in academic year 2021-22, all West-MEC students, secondary and post-secondary, earned a combined total of over 5,300 industry credentials, which is a significant increase over last year, around 1,000 more. I would like to note that the reports you have in front of you tonight that were shared are total secondary completer credentials only. So those numbers will look slightly different. It's not our total student count. And then you have the post-secondary credentials separately as well. So again, the industry credential report is made up of secondary completer credential counts by program, post-secondary credential counts by program, and then we also included our industry credential matrix. And that is our list of credentials by programs. That also lists their relevancy, because as we know, all industry credentials are not the same. With input from advisory councils and industry partners, these are West-MEC's 3 industry relevance in regards to credentials. When we say industry-ready credentials, really what we mean are those required and preferred credentials. So required credentials are those that are needed to be working in the field. So anything that is a state board license for hairstyling or esthetician, those would be required credentials. Students cannot, absolutely not work without that license. A preferred credential would be sought after by employers, and they would show hiring priority over someone who does not hold that credential. So for example, in Arizona, our medical assistants do not need to have a certification. However, the CCMA or the RMA certification is recognized by most clinics as a credential that they would like their medical assistants to have. And then we of course also have our relevant credentials, which are nice to have credentials. And then candidates with those credentials would probably not get hiring priority over someone with more years of experience.
Jessica, real quick, which ones do we provide financial support for?
So we provide financial support on our secondary side for required and preferred credentials. So any of those credentials West-MEC has been able to pay for over the last few years due to some government grants and awards that we've gotten, scholarships, things like that. Some important notes to keep in mind as you're looking over this credential report. We just touched on industry relevance. Testing eligibility and availability is always a big pain point. Some credentials require testers to be 18 years of age. A lot of our students don't turn 18 until after they leave us at West-MEC. The pharmacy technician license as well as the FAA aviation certifications fall in that category. And then the availability, we touched on it earlier with Dr. Spurgeon's comment about the START Center being in the final stages of being a testing center for the Arizona State Board. They are catching up. They've been behind because of COVID. They stopped testing students completely during that year. They're catching up, but it's still very slow to get our students in. So having that test center over at START is really going to make a difference for those hairstyling and esthetician kids.
Will that be just our students, or will that be open to the public?
It'll be both. So we're currently trying to figure out what schedules will look like. We'll possibly have maybe a day or two a week set aside just for West-MEC students, and then have that open to public. And then we're also trying to get everyone that's still waiting to test from West-MEC to get them through the testing process first before we open it.
A question, the testing for the hairstyling credentials, is that available upon request, or is that offered only once a week, once a month, once a year?
I'm not sure what their scheduling looks like. I don't know how many times a week or a month they offer those. But I can tell you that we're just now seeing some of our 2020 completers are still testing currently. I'm sorry, 2021.
2021.
2021 are still testing currently, so the last year of completers.
So will we have new staff on board to help with this?
The hope is yes, that we do. As you know, our testing center is currently open Tuesday through Friday. We have been recruiting for a second testing proctor to help really expand it to a Monday through Friday. And we are also, we finally got a second applicant for that second person. So we are truly, truly hoping that this will be our person that we then can expand to a Monday through Friday, expanding those opportunities. So we look forward to that.
And then they do get paid. I mean, they have to pay to take the tests.
Correct. So they pay per metric, or they pay the vendor. They pay the vendor for the test, and then when they come to test with us, we get a small fee for each person that comes in and tests. So we do get some revenue. It's not a lot, but it's good for the community. It's definitely good for our students, so.
And it's great for West-MEC.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I do want to mention at this time, we're only going to be testing the written portions of exams. So esthetician, that includes both exams. But for hairstyling, that just for now includes the theory. They're still working on trying to make the practical exam an online test. And when that happens, then we'll be able to offer both of those at the START Testing Center as well.
Very good.
National pass rates is another important note. Some of our credentials are very difficult to pass, even for those that have been in the industry for a long time, and our IT security certifications definitely fall into that category. And then lastly, costs for post-secondary students. You just heard that secondary students, we kind of try to take care of them with government grants, award scholarships. Unfortunately, post-secondary students do have to pay their certification fees, and those are usually embedded in their program fees.
Yes, so we've tried to embed at least one certification into the program cost so that we can support and encourage our adult learners to test at least once for one credential while they're with us. But aside from that, if they want additional credentials or unfortunately if they don't pass, it's a fee that they have to incur in addition to the tuition that they're paying for the programs to attend with West-MEC. It varies. Like for example, at welding, it could be as inexpensive as $200 with us, with West-MEC, up to thousands of dollars elsewhere. The FAA, that one I think once they test for all three, it's just over $1,000. For the IT security, the most expensive, as far the ones that we offered, was about $300, and that's one. And I believe there's at least 6 to 7 certifications that we can do for the program, and they're not easy exams. So it's rare for someone to actually pass the first time.
You gotta pay again to take it the second time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, if we can establish a grant for our adult learners, that would be very helpful to them. So, thank you. Yes.
We do have adult learners now who are qualifying for financial aid and those sorts of things. Can they apply that to the testing, or is it just like registration?
So the U.S. Department of Education allows for one certification to be embedded in the cost of the program that we can allow financial aid to pay for it. If the student, receives funds in excess of their tuition, absolutely, they can use those funds to cover those expenses.
But only the one and
Only the ones that have excess funds, like for example, if a student, qualifies for a full Pell Grant and then on top of that decides, hey, I want a little bit of a loan to cover my additional expenses outside of tuition, then they can do that and we would refund them, and then from there, they would have to invest their funds for these costs.
thank you.
And that concludes the industry credential report. So now we'll move on to our placement report. So first off, just some career services supports that are offered. They do like to build rapport through touchpoint workshops and one-on-one coaching in everything from resume writing, interview prep. They set up the mock interviews with employers, job searching strategies, networking, and then they also conduct career goal exit interviews with all of our students. And in only one school year, our career coaches complete up to 390 touch points with students. So they're in there a lot. They're in there making sure that these students are career ready. On top of that, they also regularly connect with employers. They give employer tours at the campuses. They send out job leads to our completer students. And then they're trying to collect all of the data for the new completer students that we're trying to collect. They're making phone calls, they're sending emails, they're texting them, and they are not easy to get a hold of. They move on, they go to college, they get dropped from mom and dad's data plan, and they don't want to answer their phone. So they are working really, really hard to get any of this information collected. But even though through all of these hardships trying to collect the data, I'm still very happy to report that 91% of West-MEC's 2021 secondary completers are positively placed. This means they're positively engaged in the economy, either through employment, continuing their education, joining the military, or attending a missions trip. On the secondary side, West-MEC has always had a really high response rate for placement information. And I wanted to share a shift in placement criteria with you that could possibly negatively affect that response rate moving forward. So our past placement follow-up included career coaches asking all of the information on the left-hand side. It was pretty straightforward, less than 10 questions, easy to text to students and tell them we're only going to take up 2 minutes of your time, and they were really happy to comply with us for those questions. Starting this year, the Arizona Department of Education is requiring West-MEC and its members districts to upload and collect all of the information on the right-hand side of the slide, and you all have a printout of this, so hopefully it's a little bit easier to read on your printout. And we're having to upload it into the CTE data portal. As you can see, there's been a lot of questions that have gotten added. It's great data that's going to be captured, but students might be a little taken aback by the amount of questions that they have to answer. So they might not be as inclined to work with us and to get us that data.
So, Dr. Erb, the last one is the mission trip. Doesn't that violate the other policy that just got passed?
I don't believe so, as long as it's general and doesn't get specific about what religion and ask personal questions.
And these are completers. So these are the students that are 18 and over. We're going to make sure that we're very careful not to send these to any junior students that might be still attending another West-MEC program.
It's just getting in trouble somewhere.
Mr. Chair, so just a quick question, where does this come from? Is it just is it new statutory language, or is it federal, or is it ADE just deciding that it should do this?
It's my understanding that ADE is putting this in place for all of the member districts that receive Perkins funding. They have to upload this data in the CTE portal, and they receive their Perkins funding based on how many placements they have under this criteria. We've always shared our information with member districts in regards to placement, so we would like to continue to do that. And we also this year have to upload our data to the CTE portal as well.
Yeah, as part of the more recent Perkins authorization, the feds added a whole bunch of things. And they started asking us these questions, and we're like, well, we don't know. We didn't ask those things. So now ADE is, and it just takes years to get things. Let me ask the question. When we see our chart that says 100% completers, if a student comes in and does this, and they don't know their employer address, but like they put their employer name, right, and then they go on, like, are they going to be considered a completer because they didn't fill out every blank, or they have to fill out every stinking blank to qualify?
Yeah, so the way that AD lists it is that everything but employer, supervisor, and the pay, because those were two added by West-MEC, I know those have been some data points we've wanted to track in the past, is a mandatory field under that super heading of employed, further education, advanced training, military, and then the religious service mission. So if they do not give that information and it's left blank, then I don't believe it's going to count as a complete placement.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's how we feel.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Nice.
All right, and on the adult ed side, it's very similar to what was just presented in regards to secondary in terms of positive placements. For what you see here is overall West-MEC. I hope you have access to the adult ed placement report. One thing that I would like for you to note, it's a 1.5-year lag. There's a 1.5-year lag in the reporting cycle on that. So we're reporting on 1920 completers. And I'll highlight 2020. So we were hit with COVID, and one of our programs that was hit really hard was IT security. Everybody was working online. Opportunities really were not available for our IT completers, and for the most part, they moved on into jobs that were more easily attainable at the time. So for the reporting period in 2021, unfortunately, IT security was our outlier, and it dropped us down to 66%. Had we been more positive at 70% or above, we would have been ranking way into high 70s overall for West-MEC as an institution. So IT security is our outlier. for 2020, for the 2021 reporting. We feel very optimistic about this upcoming reporting period. Having America as our designated employment specialist has been fantastic. She has spent much time with each one of the students, which is, for our IT people, they need, sorry, no offense to our IT department, but they require a little bit more kind of pulling teeth out of, okay, have you done this, have you done that, let's get you here, let's talk, let's be a little bit more personable. So she's had that under control this year, so we're feeling more and more optimistic as we move forward, as well as I've been participating in all the advisory meetings for IT security, so getting a lot of industry support in that regard has been very instrumental since this reporting period. So looking forward to more optimistic placements for IT security. And just on this next slide, as well as for on the post-secondary side, we have to gather information on where they're employed, who they're working with, their specific job title and duties. So you can't work just in a welding shop, you actually have to be a welder in order for it to count as a positive placement. So you can't be in sales. So it really digs into what they're trying to do. And again, it points back to America. She's really focusing on the students. You're going into the field, you're going to be using the skills that you've learned and you've practiced. So that is also very instrumental with our placements moving forward. Yes, Mr. Colbert.
Completer survey is fine, but in the adult ed, life happens and we have adult students that just drop out. Do we reach out and do some kind of exit interview so we know why they left?
Yes, absolutely. We do exit interviews with all of our completers as well as with our withdrawn students. Typically, our process is you should go through an administrative withdrawal and you should make contact with the staff member to let us know that you want to leave so that we can talk it through. Sometimes, we are able to get them off the ledge and get them back into class, but other times we just can't. But we do complete an exit interview with them to determine why they've left. That allows us to then report back to our accreditor of saying, hey, our students left because of, COVID, because of work illness, or I had to move out of state type of deal. So yeah, we do try to capture as much as that as possible. It helps us to understand what's happening too. Is there a problem with, the program? Is it a problem with, the school? Things that we can fix.
So we're collecting that data, and if we see outliers, like if everybody's complaining about the instructor, for instance, that would be a red flag. If it's economic, then you're kind of like, all right, well, that's it. Or if they're the spouse of a military person who got moved, then you're like, well, that was that,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that information is super instrumental. And one of the challenges that we've come across is that, again, we can't do a placement survey with adults until after they've left the program. And once they leave, they change their phone number, they move, so it's like you can't find them. We have to stalk them on Facebook, LinkedIn, some Instagram to find some form of data that says that they're employed in the field. And thankfully, our accreditor does accept that because many schools across the nation struggle to connect with students after they leave.
A quick question on gone on a mission trip. If they learn to do masonry here, and they go on a mission trip and they are building houses in Mexico, let's say, that's kind of using their skill versus, hey, they've gone to Mexico on a mission trip to provide Sunday school classes or something. Do we differentiate what they're doing on the mission trip? Are they using their job skills that they learned, or are they just not using their? Do you understand my question?
Yes, I do understand your question, and thankfully on the post-secondary side they don't dig into why are you going to the mission, what are you doing in the mission. Basically, if you're employed earning wages, then you're placed in the field. If you're out on a mission, you're really not making money, therefore you're not getting that return on your investment.
But if they chose to go and, hey, I want to build houses in Mexico, they're using what they learned even if they're not making money, and so that's kind of too bad. I guess it's too bad it doesn't count, but
correct. Yeah.
It would be nice.
The whole point is that they're earning money.
Okay.
Yes. But thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
And in the 2021 completer placement report you received, on the secondary side, you're going to find data by program percentages, as well as data by program counts, and a trend report for the last 5 years. And on the post-secondary side, you'll find the 2019-2020 data by program percentages. And that concludes our presentation, and we'll now stand for some additional questions if there's any.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Questions?
Thank you.
Questions? Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all the people behind the scenes doing all
Yeah,
the
all that tracking down. Moving on. No, Miss Babiar. Come on up. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. So thank you.
Space bar. There we go. There we go. I thought it was right after.
We gave it to you guys. Would you like me to share on Google Drive? Okay.
We have it on board.
We have it here, but the public will.
Or do you want me to just send it to you?
Do we have the same one? Or am I looking at something different?
I went a couple pages down.
Oh, okay, I got you. Don't confuse me like that.
This career services.
It's fun.
No, this is recruitment. So the first group was the people leaving us, and this is getting people into us.
That's right, yes. That's what student services does. We take them from womb to tomb, that's right.
Oh, we exited first, now we're bringing more in.
Yeah, we're going backwards.
Now we got more coming.
Yeah, that's right, because we're bringing them back in again.
40 kids, 2020.
I just shared it.
Dang.
Stand by. Some elevator music.
I was in your old stomping grounds. Well, not quite, like your moved stomping grounds.
Mrs. Brothers.
Yep.
I saw some images of it. It looked like it was a good day.
Did you have her? You were out before that?
George, did it go through?
Okay, perfect.
That's reason number 753 that I love having my online team. Everything's at our fingertips.
It's not over 1,000? Come on.
It should be. It probably was not a high enough number.
That was just for the week.
Oh, excellent. I like that.
Yeah,
I
just
like
for the
that.
week, that's
good.
right.
That's good. A little tally. Technology, it's a wonderful thing. You said how COVID has really, changed some things for us. That's one thing that I think we've gotten really well versed in is Google Drive and all of those pieces.
Magic. We're up there. While we're waiting, we met with the Surprise Chamber and the Economic Development Team. And they received some federal funding for some workforce development, and so we're looking at the adult side of that for our Northwest campus, being able to do that. So that's one area that we could expand. Once we complete our space utilization and campus utilization studies, we're looking to see what we might be able to do to be able to utilize some of our spaces that are open, whether that's during the day or outside of the day.
All the help wanted signs out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Things are happening.
give you my board book, you can work off from there, because they
We have
have
ours
Yeah.
too. We have ours too.
Yeah,
it.
they're
Let's
just
roll,
about-
because they have it printable.
Excellent. Okay, there we
They should have
go.
it.
Woohoo!
It's amazing how I just make a move.
They could sense your impatience,
Yes.
Dr. Spurgeon.
Right. Well, thank you, President Straka, governing board members, and Dr. Spurgeon. We are excited to be here today to talk about West-MEC recruitment. Today, we are going to look at recruitment overview. We're going to do some data review, and then we're going to talk about charter recruitment specifically at the end, how it intersects with everything that we do. Missed one? So to meet our team, my recruiters are out recruiting tonight, so it's just Maya and I here tonight. But we have Jolise Meadows and Carolyn Nicodemus and Kevin Ramirez. What's exciting is that all three of these recruiters have returned for their second year with us. A lot of times recruiters come and go, and that makes sense. They're young college grads usually, or even young high school grads that come with us. But it's very nice to start our school year with a whole team. What's most exciting for me is that Maya, again, in her 7th year, is part of our team. And last year, with your blessing, we were able to move Maya up to our recruitment and enrollment systems manager. So not only is she really overseeing all of the recruitment, but that very special intersection with our new focus system for our new application and registration. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of that today. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Maya Milhan, and she will begin our presentation.
Good evening, Chairman Straka, governing board members, Superintendent Spurgeon. Thank you for having us here this evening. I'm really excited to be able to share just a lot of good information about recruitment tonight. But before we really dive in, I wanted to start off with what we do as recruiters. So just share a little bit of what our kind of job duties entail and what our day-to-day lives kind of look like as recruiters. So a huge component that we do as recruiters are visits to schools, and that is really any school in our area, and sometimes a little bit outside for private schools and things like that as well. So you'll see on there that there's a good list of all those different items where we go to them to discuss our programs and logistics, help with applications, all of those different components. And we'll work with students, parents, administrators, teachers, you name it, to really share more information about West-MEC. I wanted to highlight just a few of those. So the first is our presentations, both virtual and in person, and I'll come back to the virtual component in just a moment. But that is a huge piece of really our kind of bread and butter for recruitment. So that sometimes is just one presentation to a small group, and sometimes that's the whole day at a school. Sometimes that's a whole grade level in a gym. So it really looks different every presentation, but that's a great way for us to be able to reach a lot of students and share information about our programs and next steps. The next piece that I wanted to touch on is our application workshops. Applications can be a little bit challenging sometimes. High school students are fantastic and we love working with them, but sometimes they make some mistakes. So it's nice when we're able to be alongside with them to walk them through the application process and just make sure that they understand all the questions and they know the next steps, and we can make sure that they really understand the whole scope of the application process and get them on really the right path for that. So that's a huge piece for us. And then the last thing is the new ideas. So I, like Marilyn mentioned, I'm starting my 7th year, so all of the things on your screen we've been doing since day one that I started, and this has been happening before I started with recruiters before me as well. But there's always things that come and go. There's always new things happening on campuses. There's always new ideas and new kind of innovations, and we're constantly trying to flex with the schools to be able to meet those needs and do whatever we can to make sure that we're supporting them. The next piece that we do, kind of the big 3, would be our campus tours. So that is really hosting anyone, really, who's interested in our programs or learning more about West-MEC in general on our facilities. So that can be elementary schools, high schools, community members, you name it. The elementary school tours have taken off quite a bit in the last few years due to some career exploration that has been embedded in the 5th and 8th grade level. So those tours are really exciting because we can have up to really like 125 kids at one time. We have quite a few districts that schedule multiple of those. So some really big tours with 5th and 8th graders, and that's always fun to start them on kind of their career exploration path. And then the last thing for campus tours that we do is something called van tours. So for some districts, transportation can be a barrier. It can be challenging to get vans or buses depending on the size of their tours. And we wanted to make sure that we made it as accessible as possible. So a few years ago, we started van tours, which we do have a fleet of vans outside. So that is where we will actually go to a school, pick up to 5 kids, their counselor, take them to our campus, and we only see what we call our high opportunity programs. So those are the programs that are a little bit more challenging for students to understand, that really it's helpful for them to be able to see in person. So we wanted to remove those barriers. So that's something like our Energy and Engineering Technology program. What a phenomenal program, what amazing lab spaces we have. There's no way you can really understand the scope of that until you're standing there in the labs with us. So that's just another effort of things that we try to do to make sure that we can show as many students our programs as possible. Like I mentioned earlier, we do have quite a few virtual offerings. So obviously in COVID, things changed dramatically for education as a whole. For recruitment, things came to a screeching halt because really we thrive on being in schools, in person, talking with students, talking with families, talking with parents. And when everybody got sent home, that was just not possible at all. So we really had to shift and completely turn virtual. So obviously, as we've gotten really back in person, things for us have gotten pretty much back to normal as well. But many of these are going to be staying as an option because it does just make sense sometimes for these virtual components. So our office hours are just little 30-minute meetings that we can have over Zoom with family members and students. Last year we had over 200 of those, so those have been wildly successful. Presentations, just the other week, one of our coworkers, Kevin, was doing virtual presentations for Horizon High School for really the majority of the morning, just because it was quick little time bursts and it made more sense for him to just pop in virtually than it did to drive all the way over there and come back. And we even do tours as well for those virtual settings, just to try and show off our campuses as much as we can. And then the last piece that we do for our really kind of scope is community events. So these are really important because this is a way for us to reach a very large audience at one time. So this is, instead of seeing 25 kids in a class at one moment, this is an event with potentially 6,000 people there over the scope of the event. So this really allows us to be able to network and be able to discuss West-MEC, CTE, CTEDs, really all of the good things that we believe in as West-MEC and our mission and vision in these different events. So I just listed a couple examples for you. One is the Buckeye Air Fair that happens yearly, and there's about 6,000 or 7,000 people that come. They're all really interested in aviation. There's SciTech component of that, which is all STEM, so it really ties in perfectly with CTE and with West-MEC. We do attend conferences like Homeschool Conference, like Charter Conference, to try and network with homeschool families and charter administrators in schools to really be able to open up those lines of communications. And then we assist our campuses as much as possible. So we do attend every open house. We do application workshops there. And then we try and assist as much as we can with their signature events and things happening on their campus. Yes, Mr. Kaltenbach.
It hasn't happened for the last 3 years, but have you guys done Luke Days in the past?
We have. It's a great question. Yes, we have. And you're correct. Because of COVID, that has completely changed. But yes, we have gone to Luke Days. I've personally been to once, I believe, once before it got kind of all messed up a little bit. But yeah, that was a great opportunity to be able to see so many people. It's interesting for some community events like that because that one really is more Arizona CTEDs in general, because Luke Days draws about 250,000 people from all over the state. So you are definitely talking to a lot of people in the West Valley because it's our backyard, but you're also talking to people from Tucson and people that come down from the reservation because they're just really interested in Plains and they just want to check it out. So those are really interesting events to be able to have those kind of broader level conversations as well.
And we kind of piggybacked with Central Campus, because they were like the main people setting
did, yeah.
days up, Mr. Gabalden and his
Yeah,
team.
they had
Yep.
their helicopter out there and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now that we've discussed a little bit more of really who our team is, what we do, and what our kind of job duties look like, we wanted to share some celebrations with you. I did want to just reference that we did hand out a packet, looks like this. So every year we do collect data on all of the different things that we do throughout the year. So we wanted to make sure that we shared that with you guys so you can see the trends and the different statistics and things like that. I did, before I move forward, just want to point out the photo for this. So that is actually one of our recruiters, Kevin. He is a completer of our coding program. So it's pretty interesting for us to be able to see him go from a student to now recruiting students for the future as well.
Just for the record, does that that doesn't qualify as a completer, because he's not doing,
He's working.
he's working, but like not his, what that field was, right?
Well, it's a little different in the secondary
Yeah.
than it is in the post-secondary. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Kevin counts.
Oh, her,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah,
Kevin counts.
the definition of related is a little stretched for the
Oh.
secondary students. So he's helping with our Go Tracker app, so he's still using some of his skills.
Yeah,
Okay,
very
all right.
much so.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good job, Kevin.
Yeah, we utilize his skills quite a bit. He is very
And
helpful
Kevin
to have
came
on
to
the
us
team.
right out of high school.
Yeah.
Right, well, see, that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Like sometimes, like, it's a perfect example of what we do to make better citizens.
Yes.
That are contributing to the economic viability of the state and West Valley. But like, depending on how you cut it, right, like it might not count, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, right, so that, that's always, we did a great job. The kid's gonna do good, right? In spite of us or because of us, but like, we don't get to count them. We do get to count them, and it's so that data can kind of be a little,
But we also know that what we do is a career exploration for students. So Kevin went to coding, and it's a really big gift for him, but he was looking at something new, which is speaking skills and his recruitment skills.
Right, yeah.
And it's just so neat to see that,
Yeah.
that kids can do that and then move on. Like students that take medical assisting and then they say, well, maybe I don't like blood as much as I thought I did. But that is exactly what we're there for, is to give them some career exploration and not then having to pay $18,000 or $22,000 the next year when they go off to a university and decide they don't like it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Absolutely. Okay, so just a couple kind of celebrations to go over with you guys. So going back to, I mentioned that we do quite a few tours of our campuses. So last year we led 143 tours across our 4 campuses, and we hosted over 2,800 guests. So that was really exciting for us to be able to showcase all the good things that are happening on our campuses through those tours. The next is really a little bit of a look into how many schools we visit when we do go out for those presentations, career fairs, all those good things. So you'll see here that we had 47 public high schools, 25 charter schools, 5 private schools, and 31 elementary schools. Just as kind of a side note, obviously the public high schools, there's a ceiling, right? So there's only so many public high schools in our boundaries that we work with. But the other ones, we're constantly trying to come with new relationships and new opportunities to be able to go out and visit more of those. So it's always exciting to us to try and really increase those numbers each year as well.
You mentioned Horizon.
Yes,
That's a little ways from here.
it is. Yes, we spend a lot of time on the road sometimes. Yeah.
That is the area I represent, and that's not even the furthest east part of West-MEC, and how far students have to drive to get programs in West-MEC.
We do have a student that attends Gila Bend High School and goes to our medium heavy diesel program at our Northeast campus every single day. So,
That's great.
It's
yes.
a commitment to the program, and they're
Yes.
driving
But
at
that's-
least an
Yes.
hour.
There's some
hour
commitment,
20
yes.
each way.
Yeah.
Yep, he spends a lot of time on the road, yeah. But I think that really speaks to just how much drive there is for these students and how much they believe in the opportunity and the vision that West-MEC really presents for them for those opportunities after
You
graduation.
get that opportunity anyplace. I mean, to get there in an hour or an hour and a half is a heck of a deal, because where are you gonna go? I mean, just
Well,
having that
and
available.
you mentioned the medium heavy diesel.
Yes.
I don't know how many of our board members noticed in the consent agenda, we had to approve dual enrollment with Yavapai College
Yes.
because there's no
Yes.
dual enrollment opportunity in all of the Maricopa County system. So,
Correct.
so right, like, so that just tells you, like, this is in demand, and we're one of the few places, one of the very few places meeting that demand.
Absolutely.
You know, Maya, one of the things we talk about from time to time is, do you ever have challenges getting into schools, and if so, what might that be?
Absolutely. So it depends on the school that we're discussing. So when we're talking about public high schools, standardized testing windows sometimes messes with their schedules, and that can get a little bit challenging to find a common time frame that works for both our schedule and their schedule. Normally, we can make it work. It's just a matter of a little bit of back and forth to figure out, okay, well, maybe a presentation for this huge time frame isn't gonna work. Maybe we're gonna come for just a little lunch table instead, because that'll fit in with your schedule at this time of year. So those just take a little bit of kind of massaging, and we can work through that. The schools that are a little bit more challenging sometimes would be our charters and our our private schools, and that's due to their different really scheduling pieces. So sometimes it's just not feasible for their students to leave campus and come to West-MEC, and in that instance, then it's a little bit more challenging for us to even go visit them, because it's kind of, dangling a carrot, right? West-MEC is awesome, but you can't even leave your campus to come to West-MEC. So in those instances, a lot of times, there's some challenges for us to even get boots on the ground on those locations.
I'll speak to that in just a few minutes, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple more little points to just review. We did, this last year, conduct 20 application workshops, 33 different table style events, so things like lunch tables, career fairs, things of that nature, and 20 community events. In the very end of your packet, we do have a couple growth statistics pages, so you'll see how these have kind of gone up and down with COVID. So COVID really hit us hard, especially for these, because these are only feasible in person. So we're definitely coming back strong. There's definitely still growth opportunities. We're excited for next year to see just how many we can do once we're really starting to get back in the swing of things even more. And then the last piece of data that I wanted to really kind of touch on is specific for charter, ESA, and other students. So this piece, I wanted to kind of paint the picture for you a little bit more, because I think that it's important so you can see the broad spectrum of how we really get to our enrolled students. So the first piece is the application. So every student that comes to West-MEC, as you know, does have to apply. That is a very large number. So this last year, we had 5,502 applications created. And of that, then the charter ESA group was about 853. Not every application that's created comes to West-MEC, because there's things that have to happen. So our students have to print out a verification form and turn it into their counselor. The counselor has to sign off that it does work on their schedule. Then they have to meet requirements, and then it comes to West-MEC. So in that process, there is a fair amount of students that don't meet requirements, that it's not going to work for their schedule. They change their mind. There's an issue with the application, and they redid another one. So then it kind of tailors down a little bit. So when we look at the applications we actually received, we dropped down to about 3,100. And that was about 475 for charters. So for application and received, it was about 18% of charter and ESA students for the overall numbers. Then we get down to the actual enrollment through a fair and equitable allocation formula. So essentially, when we get all of these received applications, we start to break them into districts to figure out how many seats each district is going to receive. So the more applications we have for a certain program and session for one district, the more seats they're going to have. So for example, if we have 3 times as many applications for our charter ESA other district than one of our public districts for a specific program, they're going to get more seats than that public district. So that's how it starts to trickle down and make it fair and equitable for all of our students. Then we get to these enrolled numbers. So there's a lot of things that happen before we end up at really the students in our seats. We did want to share with you some trends for enrollment specifically for charter, ESA, and other students. So you'll see 2020, 2021, 2021, and then 2022, and then this current year, which is 22-23. So when we're looking at that, we actually did have a little bit of an adjustment of numbers. So instead of 393, it's actually now 411. So it's about 18% of our overall students enrolled this current school year are charter, ESA, and other students. And just for kind of sake of clarification, ESA and other refers to homeschool, private school, and then our charter students. So, with that, yes?
How does the campus thing work? So I have students that apply for welding, and you know, I know that my school counselor filters that, and they do the score thing, and then it goes to the Peoria CTE, and then they compile, and so then they turn in whatever 20 Peoria district applications for welding.
Probably 300.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that goes into the big formula. Does that big formula, is that campus specific or is that welding in general?
It's campus specific and session. So for welding, we only have the one time that we offer it, but we offer it at 2 campuses. So we'll have one pot for Central Campus, one pot for Southwest Campus.
So if a kid applied for a different campus, they could have changed their chances of getting in.
Correct. Yes. And there is definitely some times where some schools are kind of on the border between two. So a school like Shadow Ridge is in our Dysart district, but they're actually really pretty close to our Southwest Campus when you're looking at distance.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at having a student from Shadow Ridge get into medical assisting, they could be looking at Northwest Campus or Southwest Campus. Sometimes it does make more sense for them, and they are actually more likely to get accepted to our Southwest Campus because of that allocation formula.
Do those districts know that? Like, do the
Sure.
counselors know that? Like, how
Yes.
far down does that go to like tell a kid like,
Yeah.
well, I know that Central's closer, but if you apply to Southwest, you got a better shot at
That's
getting
why the
in?
application workshops are so important.
Yeah.
So when Maya and her team or the member district West-MEC reps or any of our counselors or whomever is talking to a student, they're gonna say, where do you live, where do you go to school, and we help direct them that way. Because there might be, if, let's say Shadow had 20 kids that wanted MA and 17 of them went to Northwest. Well, the 3 that went to Southwest, pretty much those 3 might get it a lot easier, and of that 17, maybe only 10 kids would get that. So there is a little game you can play, but for the most part, it's pretty equal. Kids know where they're gonna go. They go to the area that they live. The Gila Bend kid, no doubt, gonna get the spot at Northeast Campus over at our diesel program.
We do definitely share that with the counselors as well.
It's pretty just fair and equitable, and we give the districts the choice of how they want their kids placed. Do they want one for Sunrise, one for Cactus, one for, all your schools, or do they just want highest rubric down? And we let them decide, and then we take those names and we plot them into those spots. So we give a lot of choice to our member districts. The charter folks, it's pretty much Maya and I that make those decisions, so we try to be fair and equitable, as you'll see in just a few minutes, about how many charters we have. We do want to try to get every school to get a spot if we can make that happen. So we're almost done. We just, I know last January, for those of you that were on the board, I talked a little bit about this charter recruitment, and I'm happy to be back to talk about it again. One of the things, we were talking so much about applications that Maya and her team have a goal with, under Dr. Spurgeon's big goals that he has, we are going to put a 3% increase on applications, and specifically charter and ESA and other applications. So we're hoping to raise those numbers even higher. And as we were talking, Maya said that 18% of the students in West-MEC are from charters. And I remember last month, Mr. Straker, you were talking about 21% in the state was, so we did our homework, 21 from the state. So we're pretty excited about this 18%. And really, when you look at the state charter enrollment, it's about 253,000, but we know that number isn't all high school students. That's elementary students in charter. So that 21% and our 18% don't really, register because we're talking only high school kids and they're talking in the state elementary and high school. So I think we're doing really good. We're pretty excited about those numbers. So I hope that's something that helps you when you're thinking about our numbers and where we're at. What we do specifically for our charters. So Focus was new last year, and one of the really exciting parts about Focus is that our member district counselors and some of our charter counselors were able to get their own logins into our system. So when Maya was explaining, kids bring an application to their counselor, then the counselors, because we built these great relationships with them, they do the work for us. They upload their transcript, they fill out the rubric electronically, all inside of our Focus system, because they all have passwords for that. So for our charter folks, we get this many kids in charters, right? So we want to get back on this. So we decided that if they had 5 or more students in West-MEC, then we were going to give those charter folks that access as well. So our Odysseys and our Paradise Honors. So they loved it too. So, but the piece that happens in that next application and allocation, Maya herself then takes care of every other homeschool, charter, or private school or family that has less than 5 kids in the program. So she does really individual and specific assistance with them with a Google Doc and sends them something, they send it back. They send her through a Google Doc the transcript, and then we print it out at West-MEC. So our goal is to get more than 5 students from these, now maybe not our homeschool families, but all the rest of them, our private schools and our charter schools, more than that, so we can just be giving them their own passwords. Because there's a little bit of training involved in it and there's some turnover, so it worked for us. That was the random number we picked, and it was a good number. And then for application workshops, we're really doing these targeted application workshops. In fact, even this year, we have counselor grants, and our rookies, which are like new counselors, we've even told them in their grant they have to do an application workshop and go through our request to recruiter, come on out, and they'll do the application workshop for them. So we kind of try to take it from every side that we can, but we really are helping our charters out. And again, this is just a great group. Mr. K.
How does the FEAF work?
The what?
The fair and equitable.
Oh, fair and equitable.
That was the thing.
You give us a new acronym. I didn't have that one.
You said it was a fair and equitable application form, right?
Well, it's just fair and equitable the way we just give out allocations.
Sorry, my bad.
Yes.
All right.
Well, I'm going to have my Mr.
digress.
Welch come on up because he's my
How does?
So together we work with Stephen's department and our department to make sure how we do percentages to our districts. So we might want to talk about our smaller districts and.
Well, specific question about homeschool. Because I understand that form, right, takes into account grade point average and attendance and discipline and all that at the public school. Well, what kind of attendance is there at homeschool? The kid's there all the time. So how do you say that this kid?
We have a homeschool rubric that's different.
Okay.
So we created a homeschool, I'm sorry, Stephen, thank you for coming up. We have a homeschool rubric that a student has to take it to maybe someone that they work for or someone in their church or someone that they know, and they score them on dependability and reliability and those things differently than how our academic counselors in charters and privates and member districts do. So we do have our own separate, and I can show that to you, we can send you that, but we have a different rubric that gets to that same 70 score, but it's by faith, right? These are families that are coming in, they have their own transcripts, sometimes it comes from the state, sometimes it comes from their own curriculum that they have created and make that, but they're a student, they're there, we take their information, and they've been wildly successful in our program. All of our students are wildly successful in our program. So, right student, right program, it's been working.
I had one actually the teacher say that she absolutely loves West-MEC. It's just the best thing since sliced bread, but she does have a problem. She said it appears to her that the students who least need it are the ones that get accepted. And that the ones that don't have as many opportunities don't get accepted. And I simply said, look, I know it's done as fair as we can do it. I cannot tell you how it's done. You're explaining it, there's no way I could tell anybody how it's done.
And I would love to talk to that family and see what we can do to help them, because the rubric can be as high as 70, but a good rubric can have a rubric score of 42 or above, and that's kind of like a passing score. We know that if kids are gonna stay in the program, they have good attendance and they have good discipline. Because if they're not doing those on their home campus and they score low in there, they're gonna end up not showing up. And then, so are we picking students through this equitable process that all of our schools use? Yes, because we know that our retention rates, as you've seen Mr. Welsh bring up in front of you, are in the high 90s all the time. And isn't that what we want to do, is to give those
how
kids?
you screen them in the beginning.
But there's lots of students that we know this is, so in that rubric, there's an ECAP score. And that's for when that counselor's sitting down one-on-one with that student and saying, my dad's a welder, my mom's a welder, we own our own welding shop, and I want to be a welder. And you can give them that 10 out of 10 because that makes a difference for them as well. Hopefully that will help that they chose not to come to school 18 times per semester. So, you kind of have to weigh that because we have that same attendance policy. I'm sure my principals in the back are making phone calls, kids missing 2 or 3 of those, but we don't have a lot of attendance issues because of this. And so we have the data to show it. But we would love to talk to a family that would say that so that we can figure out what it is that's making them believe that. So again, every one of these schools, from private and charter and homeschool, are in our school right now. And then these were the names of the schools that had that 5 or higher amounts of students in our school, that they're in our focus system and are able to do their own rubrics and their own transcript uploads on their own. So our 48 member districts and 48 schools, as well as all of these folks. And that was slick last year. That was the best part of focus for me last year, was watching our counselors in the member districts be able to upload, and again, Mr. K, probably 300 applications from Peoria, and they all did it. So that's Generation Orange. We are really moving, we believe, in the right direction. Our numbers are good and solid. We had 85% of our programs filled this year. A couple different issues that had happened with having to close Precision, and some programs that are high opportunity that we're always trying to work to get more and more students to see the value of that. But we are very excited about the prospect of another recruiting year right in front of our eyes. So we stand for any questions.
When do people actually apply?
Well, the application usually opens mid-October. We're working on 2.0 application this year, working with Focus. We may be a little, we don't know. We're hoping between October 17th and Halloween, our app will open up. But they're not due to West-MEC until like February 7th or 2nd. So they have all of November, all of December, and a lot of January.
Isn't there an open house or something in October?
Yes, they start in October and they run through December, and we will accept applications all the way through the end of summer. So the applications that come to us before that deadline that Marilyn was mentioning in February are our priority applications, so those are the ones that we see first. That's the easiest time to get accepted, right, because then we have the full seats open. After that, then it's, okay, well, we have 1 seat left and we're gonna pull from the wait list for that 1 seat kind of thing. So it's a little bit more challenging after that February timeframe, but we do accept applications all through summer for those students that forgot, that missed it, that just moved here, just learned about it, all of those things as well.
And you would be surprised, hope is a good thing, right? Because kids come in, they register, and then they move, or they make cheerleading, or they get a boyfriend, or they get, lots of things happen that they choose not to be in it before school starts. And then our counselors and our campuses, because we can take kids up to day 10 for most of our programs, and they are working hard. first day of school to the 10th day of school to fill those kids that chose not to come or couldn't afford something. And, we help with that whole piece too. But there's lots of reasons why students that are in the program choose to leave the program before it starts. Once they're in though, that's where our retention stays. So we're just working hard from October till day 10 of August when we know that we're going to stop filling those programs. And we have to stop at some point because of our hours-based programs. We're not like a comprehensive high school. Being a counselor, Dysart High School, they'd come in October and November and December and January, just keep putting kids in teachers' classes, and then they don't like you, right, Mr. K?
That's awesome.
That's
That's
right.
the best.
That's awesome. That's right. But we don't do that to our West-MEC teachers. They can get them up to day 10, and that's it.
So I have a question on the fair and equitable. How do you prevent counselors from gaming the system? And what I mean by that is, Mr. Case in Peoria, he has 5 kids that truly good and they're interested. I'm in Paradise Valley, and Paradise Valley, let's pretend that we have better enrollment. But I really have 5 kids, but I know it's going to be based on total applications. So I know my 5 kids that I really want to get in, but then to pump up my numbers so I get my allotment, other kids come in and say, hey, why don't you apply? You said programming, you might want to check this out, apply. So I get 10 other kids to apply, so that when you break down the numbers, I really get the 5 kids in that I want in, and he gets 2 in of his 5.
You know what it is? It's just trust. We build these relationships with these counselors, and they just do it. They find the kids, they talk to them, they do their rubrics. It doesn't mean that there isn't somebody out there doing it, but I really believe that the number that comes in has taken a lot of work on the backs of those West-MEC reps and the counselors in those schools, and they send those apps that are good, and they're having ECAP conversations with them, because that's what's important for them, is for the right student to get in the program. And they're talking about their own satellites. They're saying, hey, be in our program. We have really great CTE programs on our campus. So could they do that? Yes. Do we see that? I don't see that. I have faith and trust in those counselors that they are really doing right by West-MEC, the kids, and their own morality in what they do.
They really hold each other accountable as well, because
Yes,
they
they
really, like, if you were in the room when we're really talking about rubrics and allocation, their biggest question is, how do we make sure that every district is doing this the same? How do we make sure that every school is doing this the same? Because they want it fair and equitable for all of their students as well. I've never, in my 7 years, had an instance where I've had a counselor say, oh, well, maybe if I just, sneak these ones in somehow. They've always been very holding everybody to the same.
Because all I hear is, and so I don't want to, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
It's okay.
And the
I
only
love it.
reason I bring that up is because Paradise Valley always has lower numbers. Maybe we should take a higher percentage of the lower number districts, because are they truly the same quality? And when I look at, and since I represent that area, they're 21% of our tax base. And yet they're like 3% of our enrollment, if that. And so
But
are
their
we,
applications are low.
Are
That's
much
the
lower.
problem.
but are they the same quality as the 300 from Paradise Valley? And maybe we should, or 300 from Peoria, because then when the enrollments come in and they just had a wider net, I just think it's maybe something we should, I don't want to have a long debate, but maybe something we should
I understand.
We can
you know,
definitely look into it.
How do we
I'm an
help
advocate-
PV get more kids for
Right,
a couple
because
of years to get it going, right?
Right, because if we get a momentum going, then maybe,
More kids,
instead
no.
of 8, we'll get 25, and if we get 25, maybe we'll get 75, but how do we get them? Because if I'm a counselor at PV, I just can't get kids in.
And we do that for our smaller schools, like our Wickenburgs and our Tonopahs, because they can't compete with that. You could compete with that, but they don't. But we need to look. Every year we look at something new, so thank you.
I want to make sure that we address them.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is a follow-up to Chairman Strucka's question, and then I have a follow-up question. But so with regard to each of us has our own separate sub-district, as you know. We have 7 sub-districts, and roughly each of us, just for simplicity, has 250,000 constituents. And within each of those sub-districts, there are so many kids going to high school. So let's say 10th, 11th, and 12th grader. So if you normalize that, based on the number of students that are going, and you then count over, longitudinally over the last couple of years, how many students from each of those sub-districts are in there, you would have at least a good idea of how West-MEC is represented in each of those districts. And that would be very valuable information to each of us as representatives of the people.
I think the easiest way to do that, because it could be complicated, just pick the high schools that are in each district, because my high school boundaries vary, but if you know, hey, in Mr. Straka's district, there are these 5 high schools, how are those enrollments? I bet Boulder Creek is a lot better than Horizon.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so-
Oh, you just pulled my district.
Yeah,
Right, and we have it. So we
I
can
think
get
that is an
You can see
easier
it by district.
method, but overall, it gives a more global number. But this leads to my second question, which is, and it kind of was triggered. First of all, I thought the way you presented the descriptive statistics for each of the areas, I thought that was very well done. It was actually quite easy to follow, and it was very informative to me as a board member, so thank you. So if we assume right now that we have somewhere between 1.1 and 1.2 million students in public education and charter, right? Somewhere around there.
1.111 is the number, I think.
Yeah, 1.1.
Yeah, 1.1 for total, for
For
charter,
total.
district, and ESA.
For total,
Yeah,
yes,
1.1.
Is that in West-MEC?
In all K-12 Arizona.
Right.
Okay.
Arizona.
So-
Arizona K-12.
So if you divide that and you take, just roughly the percentage of kids that would be entering into potential recruitments or recruits for our district, and you look at that, and you also look at the number of incoming kids in the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, have you modeled, are we growing? Are we getting more people in the 10th and 11th and 12th grade, and by how much? And if we're doing that now, where will we be in 4 years? Because we can know that, right? We should be able to know that. And that would be very informative to the board, right? Because we're going to be asked to make decisions on new acquisitions or buildings and things like that, but we do need to know. So I don't expect you to have that answer, but
High school data is already there, so we already have that for each district. We can tell you whether they're growing or not.
Yes.
Which would be applicable.
because we heard a demographic presentation, I think, about a year ago, and there were some declines in the areas that we were. And so I think in any future presentation for expenditure, new building, and so on, I think that is very pertinent data for us as a board to understand, because obviously we want to make investments and we want to do that, but we need to make sure that you have a growing number of people to recruit.
Well, but you've got waiting lists on a lot of them, right?
That's today.
So that's,
Yes, Mr. Kay.
So I kind of have the opposite concern as Mr. Straka. I'm not overly worried about, I believe that I'm a board member for the whole district, and I know I have a region, but like as setting policy as a board as a whole, we should be thinking about our whole district. Mrs. Babiar, you use the word right kid, right place, or whatever you,
Right student,
yeah.
right program, right reasons.
So I was looking at the data that we got from the completer data, yes. I'm looking at pharmacy science, and this one concerns me because it says that whatever it was, 77 completers, right, like twice as many are
going on to school, 61 versus 36 that have gone out to be pharmacy techs.
Okay.
And my concern is as you and I have talked before, there's lots of great kids all over the West Valley, awesome kids. And lots of kids are gonna go to college, they're gonna go to college. They wanna go to med school, awesome, great, go to med school. I'm not worried about that top 10%. They're gonna succeed no matter what the heck we do. I'm worried about that next 50%. And there's those kids that are, right, like teetering on whether they're going to be a contributing member of our society. And as a greater, economic engine in our West Valley, like a kid who's gonna go to college anyway gets into a West-MEC program, great. It'll help them with school, great. But if we missed a kid that was just that next person down who now is gonna be doing menial labor because they didn't make it into one of our programs, that's where I'm concerned. Like, what about those kids falling off? The falling off the bottom thing. It's anecdotal. I have a student who was in my program. He's awesome welding. He's not a straight A student. He didn't get in. So I want to, why didn't he get in? Because he's done all the welding he can do at my school. So we're not stealing him from our satellite program. He needs to go on, but he didn't make it in. And he's the kind of kid that's going to end up doing a menial job later on where he could have gone on, right? And I don't know how to get that kid in.
So
when we have kids who
can I rephrase your question?
Deserve to get in, but don't need it. There's kids who don't need it that are making it in off that top 10%.
Can I rephrase this question? I think what your question is, are kids applying, so picking the pharmacy example, are kids applying to the pharmacy program as a better chance to get into the pharmacy college at U of A versus they really want to go into the pharmacy program right out of high school? I think what you're saying is we're not here to help kids get into the pharmacy college as much as we're here to help them get a good job right out of high school.
I don't mind helping the other, but our priority should be the filling in the workplace.
So does that and how do we address that?
I think it's a great question.
Because I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, that next group.
Yes. How do we get?
I don't know how.
They're with us too. They really are. Welding, we could use more welding.
Well, no, welding, I didn't bring up welding as an example. Welding, I think, is doing great because 22 of the 31 are straight in employed, right? So that they're doing that, right? Those are the kids they got welding and they're doing welding, right?
But our pharmacy kids could be working at a CVS and going to ASU to get their pharmacy
Well,
degree.
this chart actually delineates whether they're in education and employment or education or just employed. Because it's really good data. Good job. But
Actually, I've got a granddaughter who told me about a year ago, she was a junior, I'm not gonna go to college, Grandma, I don't think. I said, okay. She ended up applying for one of our courses here. So she will be employed after she graduates from high school because of the
Right.
course that she's taking here. Whether she changes her mind a year or two down the road, I don't know. But what you just said, that scenario you just said, it dawned on me that
But I don't know where that goes, and I don't know how to parse it out unless we impress that upon every school counselor. So it's like, well, are you just going to go to college because maybe somebody else could use the spot? I don't know how to have that conversation, and I don't know how to. And you and I've struggled with this for years.
And our rubric, we really try. So it's not, you don't get all the points to have a 4.0. You get all the points if you have a 3.0 GPA. So we really are trying to make sure that the kids that apply to our program are just regular kids that are seeing this as their pathway and they're making it happen.
And the one thing that I would add too that's kind of challenging, especially for something like pharmacy, is sometimes the path that they come into West-MEC with changes while they're in the program. So sometimes they start with West-MEC and say, I really just want to be a pharmacy tech. And then through the mentorship through their teacher, they really get encouraged to, go the full journey and go through pharmacy school, and their path dramatically changes. And I think that the career trees really paint that picture of it does change. And we've really had this conversation of it's not a forever decision, it's a for now decision. So their for now decision when they're starting the program could be dramatically different in a year through this pharmacy program, especially with all these guest speakers from industry and their teacher and seeing all the possibilities. Sometimes I think that they shift their own goals just because they've never had that opportunity before.
And the good individual conversations that we have with the counselors with their discovery meeting, the exit interviews, the mock interviews, the resume writing, everything, and just being around students that are like-minded and what they're doing changes who they are and what they want to do.
Well, I'm excited. You've done a great job recruiting. I mean, obviously we've spurred a lot of conversations, so thank you very much. I mean, it's just, it's exciting to see what you're doing, especially kudos on all the charter school stuff. Great job.
Thank you. We appreciate
And we appreciate your questions, because this is the new ideas that Maya and I talk about, so.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Do you have a rough estimate of what percentage of your recruitment events involve parents? And is information provided in other languages other than English?
It's a great question. I don't have the percentage off the top of my chart, but I could absolutely run that for you. We do have some materials printed in Spanish. One of our recruiters is Spanish speaking as well. And then we do have a translation service that we can work with for other languages as needed. Yeah.
I know we have a lot of refugee communities,
absolutely.
Vietnamese and Glendale area and all that.
Yep. We had our first transcript this year that we got to read in Ukrainian. That was very interesting. Yeah. So, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to calendar of events, you can see there's a think tank and Alliance Top Golf Tournament. So anyone who golfs or would like to golf, November 3rd. Maybe our superintendent would be willing to take a couple of swings at Top Golf, and Dr. Erb, maybe we could get you to play a little golf as well.
Is it a golf tournament or?
No, it's just
Top Golf.
Top Golf.
I've never done that. I want to do it. When is it?
It's on
November
it's on
3rd.
your agenda.
It's on the agenda.
11/3.
And-
11/3, right there.
Ms. Wiley, you can
Sign up.
sign up with the, and then a couple, there's the Vision Conference and School Board Conference, future agenda items.
Project search report?
We're beginning the human resources study, Doctor?
Yes.
We'll have an update next.
Yeah, coming in October, it's going to be a superintendent goal update. So you're going to get an update on all 5 areas of where we are and the progress we're making.
Great. Any other reports or questions?
Just thank you, Dr. Spurgeon, for the biweekly updates you provide. Very new, very refreshing. Thank you.
Short, a little more bullet points, long to start with, but it's really a reflection of everything that's going on, so you're fully kind of aware. And it's amazing how much work we actually do when you start looking through those pieces of information.
And I would just echo Dr. Pingarelli's comments, because I know a lot of that work comes from the staff. So in case the staff didn't know, the board now gets a report, and it's about every week or two, and it's about 6 pages of everything everybody's doing. So it's really cool to have a little more insight into everything going on, which is really nice. So thank you.
Actually, I have my report and I read it and I circled I was going to ask questions and I left it at home.
You can call Dr. Spurgeon up. I move on to item number 16, if anyone would like to adjourn. So moved. All right. Ms. Markham, 7:32.
Another half hour.